Hello, and welcome to the Finished Goods vlog, where we will explore ways that you can harness the power of your Industrio system to streamline your processes, create efficiencies, and at the end of the day, hopefully make your work life a little simpler. Today, we're going to explore part one of our two-part series on how to supercharge your item creation process. In part one, we will explore the value of optimizing the configurations of your item types in Industrios. And then stay tuned for part two of this series, where we will explore a brand new Industrios tool called the Inventory Item Master Review. This awesome new tool is an enhancement on the standard ESI import functionality. And when coupled with optimized item types, it will simplify and streamline the item creation process by harnessing the power of Industrios to fill in the blanks for you, whether you need to create one item or 1,000. Now, keep in mind, the methods we explore today may show some features that your user account does not have access to, dependent on your user rights and or the version of Industrios that you're currently using. So if you're having trouble finding a menu option, contact your internal Industrios administrator to request to have these features added. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact your Industrios account team and or our support desk. With all that being said, let's get started. As I mentioned earlier, today we're going to explore the Industrios item types master file and discuss some ways that you may be able to optimize your configurations to best support the item creation process. To access the item type master file from the main drop-down menu, select Inventory, Inventory Control, Master Files, and Item Type. Or alternatively, you could have searched for it in the search bar. Now, every item in Industrios has a 3-digit code associated with it, called an item type subtype. And you can see that on this screen in these two columns right here. While it's only 3 characters long, this selection can tell the system and you, the user, a lot of information about an item. The first part of an item type subtype, the type, indicates if the item in question falls into one of 3 broad categories. F-type items are finished goods, N-type items are non-stocking items, and R-type items are raw materials. In broad terms, finished good type items are quantity-bearing items in your inventory. Oftentimes, these are items that you may produce to then sell to your customers. Non-stocking items are non-quantity-bearing inventory items, and often include things like services and fees that you may purchase or sell. Things like freight, design fees, or sample charges often fall into this category. Lastly, raw materials are quantity-bearing items and are typically associated with whatever materials you use to produce your finished goods. All of the items in your inventory master file should fit into one of these 3 buckets, and the selection made will dictate some of your item's behaviors and accounting. The subtype allows us to further differentiate and group items that possess similar characteristics related to processing, accounting, and reporting, among other qualities. From the main screen of the item type master file, you can either create a new item type or select one from the list to maintain it. It takes some time and careful consideration to properly establish these item type subtypes, but once you have established them, you will likely only revisit them when significant changes happen in the way that you use your items and conduct your business. On the Details tab, we're able to assign our subtype when we're creating a new type. This is also where we can assign or maintain the description for our subtype. If you're working with an N-type item, you will additionally have the option to select whether it is a freight subtype by selecting this box that is currently grayed out. If you're not working with a freight type subtype, this selection should always be blank. The options that follow on this section of the tab will only be relevant in environments where Industrios order job functionality is in use. Order jobs are used to accumulate costs at the order level rather than the standard order line level. If you have questions about the order job process and whether it's something that fits your business practices, again, I would suggest either contacting your Industrios account team or speak with the Industrios support desk. Finally, there's an option to choose whether you would like Industrios to auto-assign the next item number. If selected, the subsequent options will be made available, allowing you to define an item number mask with an optional mask suffix as well. If you wish to manually enter the item number at the time of creation, the auto-assignment option should remain blank. Next is the Item Defaults tab. This is where we have a lot of the power from the item type comes from, and if optimized, we can create a lot of time savings for you when you're creating new items. You will note on the screen that many of the fields have a radial button beside them. This is to indicate that there is a supporting table of options beneath the current selections. Selecting the radial button allows you to see the available options in that field and then dictate which options should be available for the particular item type, and it even allows you to set a default, meaning that every new item created of this subtype will have that default option pre-selected on it when the item's created. So essentially what that means is that the more options you're able to default on this screen, the fewer selections that will be required when you're creating new items. All of that adds up to saved time. The classification section contains up to 5 different supporting tables of item classifications that you are able to define to help describe the different elements of your items. Because these tables are shared across all of your different item types, the underlying tables may have far more options than are relevant to this particular item type. As you can see with this one, there's some extra colors that aren't relevant for my particular item type, so I've not selected them as options to be available for items of this item type. However, you can, as I've noted, you can filter the options on the screen so that you only see what's relevant to this particular item type. When you properly leverage these classification fields, you can not only streamline the item creation, but it can also be very important for reporting, and it can even be used to inform a smart numbering scheme. The planning section allows you to define the planning rules for the selected item type, and, if relevant, dictate which users are responsible for that planning in Industrios. The planning and order policy inform the system about how you intend to interact with these items and are important for inventory planning. The costing section allows you to default the proper cost accounting methods for the selected item type and the default number of cost decimals. The cost method and cost oversold cost method allow you to select the available options and set a default. In both cases, it is highly recommended to not only limit these options if possible for your item type, but very strongly recommended to set a default. Lastly, we have the stocking section, which contains important defaults related to how you will stock items of the currently selected item type. You must set the stocking unit of measure, quantity, number of decimals, and select the appropriate locations. The locations are very important from the perspective of optimizing your defaults. It will not only create a location record on your items that are created based on what you select here, but it will also predefine some of the accounting rules based on the item class and WIP class you associate with each location. Configuring the locations on your item type properly saves time during the item creation process and ensures that your inventory will be properly accounted for. Next, we have the purchasing defaults. Here you have the option to ask Industrios to create a purchasing unit of measure, which by default will match your stocking unit of measure that we selected on the previous page. So here we've selected each, and if we select the box here to create the purchasing unit of measure, when we create our item, it'll also create a purchasing unit of measure. Additionally, you can set a default purchase tax key here. If taxes are relevant for this item type, you can select that tax rate and it will be configured on your purchases and voucher lines. The time savings for predefining this information are not only found on item creation, but also on the lines of your POs and vouchers. So this creates efficiencies, but it can also ensure that the proper selections are made without any future input from the users. After this, we have the selling defaults. And again, you have the option to ask Industrios to create the selling unit of measure and sales tax key. Additionally, you can select the available freight class and NMFC codes for this item type and define a default for this particular item type. This option is also important for if your shipping process requires bills of lading, as these selections will flow through the item to your shipments and your documents. If your business processes utilize discounts in Industrios, you have the option to dictate whether you would like to exclude items of this currently selected item type from any discounts offered. You also have the option to say whether or not to allow price overrides at shipping. Once again, these defaults can not only create efficiency during item creation, but also during sales order entry, and even ensure that the proper selections are made for these fields without ever having any further input from the user. Finally, we have our tracking tab. Now, dependent on your business practices, serial and lot tracking may be common to you or completely irrelevant, but in a nutshell, tracking serial and lot numbers adds an additional layer to the inventory transactions related to your items. Given this, it is important to distinguish whether serial lot tracking is required for purchases or sales, and if the serials and lots do not expire, we need to make sure that the days to expire is set to 0. Again, you also have the option to list, to give them a mask if that's relevant, and determine the different lot sizes if lots are involved. If you are creating or maintaining an item type and you're not sure about the selections on this screen or any of the other screens, again, it's highly recommended that you contact the Industrio support team for guidance. So that wraps up our exploration of how you can optimize your item classes to streamline the item creation process. Remember, the more defaults you can predefine in your subtypes, the fewer fields that will need to be filled in when you're creating an item and using that item in Industrios. Again, keep an eye out for part 2 of this series to learn more about our exciting new Inventory Item Master Review tool to tackle importing new items into Industrios in a flash. We hope you enjoyed this video, and feel free to provide feedback or contact us with any questions you may have.